Alright, so it's been about 5 days now since the release of the latest box into Duel Links, and it's also been about 2 months since I've done an actual proper tier list video. And obviously since then there's been a whole bunch of cards added to Duel Links and a whole bunch of meta changes and stuff going on, so I thought it's about time I did an updated tier list video letting you guys know my thoughts on the current metagame and the impact of the latest boxes on the game and just my thoughts on all the art types in general. So let's jump into it. So obviously, just like with all my tier list videos, I can't cover every single deck in the history of Duel Links in one tier list, as that would be absolutely ridiculous. So I've basically gone on Duel Links meta and just gone through the most popular 20 deck lists and just posted those art types in the tier list and added a couple more on top of that based on just newer stuff, because obviously most of you guys want to know my thoughts on the newer stuff, even if it isn't necessarily performing that well. You might want to know what I think about it anyway. So I put top 20 deck lists and a few extra ones based on new stuff. So if your deck list isn't on this list, don't take offense. It's just your deck isn't performing or isn't popular enough where it's really considered putting in this video, or worth me putting in this video basically. So alright, let's jump into it. So first and foremost, we've got your Crystron. Obviously, technically this did actually receive some new support from the latest box. Although in my opinion, the latest support was just... yeah, I don't think it's doing much more for this art type. The art type's doing exactly what it was doing before, except now it can make a Quarion during your opponent's turn, which is kind of nice, but at the same time, if you're doing your whole turn, it's just summoning one Quarion. That is very bad in current meta. It can do other stuff, there are other things it can do, but it's not really setting up a whole lot more than a Speedroid deck would sort of do in terms of just amounts of disruption, and has like no real spaces for tech cards because you're playing so much engine just to make your proper board setups. I just don't like it whatsoever. It has some advantages, like you can sort of set up a way to not take damage on your first turn, which is, if you're going first, which is a real big advantage against Hero currently. It's kind of what Lyrilusc does against the art type, but outside of that, you're not really setting up a whole lot of disruption compared to other art types. It's about the same, and you can't have that much, and in order to do so, you can't play that many tech cards. Your entire deck is engine. I don't like the art type very much. Oh boy, Gemini. What have they done to you? Dude, okay, so if you guys didn't know, before this art type was released, there was a skill leak, which was like, and the skill looked insane, and the cards leaked for the skill also looked insane. It made it look like this art type was going to be like a tier 2 sort of a deck. And then the real skill came out, and oh boy did they butcher it. They made it so that in order to search, you had to have a restriction where you had to open the trap card specifically. They made it so that we didn't get one of the monsters that was meant to be added to the game, which was in the game files, so it was probably going to come, and they just didn't add it for some reason. And there's some other thing they did to the skill too that I've already forgotten and blocked out of my mind. But basically, they made the skill oh yeah, that's right, they made the extra deck lock, so you can't summon the level 3, you can't do the cool... I forgot, I'm completely blanking on it. Basically, they've locked the extra deck out of going into all these generic synchros that would have made it super good, especially considering, like, every skill they've added recently has had this thing on the skill. They say you have to play, like, Salamangreat monsters only, excluding the extra deck. But for Gemini, they took that part out of the skill. It was originally in the skill, we got the leaked version of it, but for some reason they changed it for release, and it's unplayable. This deck is literally just unplayable, top tier garbage, so it's now despair tier. I'm very disappointed about that. Ghost Rick. This deck has fallen off an absolute cliff. This shit was looking really good like a couple months ago. It was actually like a tier 2, almost tier 1 deck in some cases in terms of like, it was actually competing very well with Predaplant. But now it's actually just fallen off a cliff. I think that's because it doesn't keep up as well against Hero, and Hero is obviously incredibly popular. I don't think it did ever really have that good of a matchup against... I can't remember which matchups it was super good against. I don't remember if it was that great. I think it was okay against Lyrilusc. But certainly it's not that great versus Hero, I think. And because of that, it's fallen off an absolute cliff in terms of that. So I think it's still rogue tier though. It's still a really good deck. But just no one's playing it anymore because Hero is so popular. But it's good against, or decent against some of the other stuff that are going around. Raid Raptor. I'm surprised I have to rate this deck. It's just I have to rate it because it was that popular that it was people are still playing this to King of Games and stuff. I mean, it's a deck that exists. It's mostly only good going first. Going second, it's just not great whatsoever. It suffers a lot of the issues that Crystron have, where you can't really have that many tech cards because you're forced to play so much engine in order to set up your Enfields. The Enfields are fantastic for it. Like, the difference between these two decks is This one actually sets up a really strong infield, whereas this one just sets up like a decent infield, but nothing too exceptional compared to other stuff. This one sets up some exceptional fields, but it can't really play going second. It's only a little bit better than Crystron, I would say. I don't think it's even a rogue tier deck. I'm going to put it here. Predator Plant. That is straight up tier 2, which is crazy to think about. I'm interested to see after the next KC Cup if it still remains tier 2, because a lot of the better players, when they're playing this art type, because it's a very skilled art type to play, might even show that it's still good enough to be tier 1. I'm very interested to see KC Cup top performers, but currently, based on current tournament results and key games and all that kind of stuff, and where people are actually playing, I think it's tier 2. It's just not... It's fallen off compared to Hero. It seems to be worse than Hero, which makes it, yeah, not going to be a tier 1 deck. That kind of spoils what Hero's going to be, but yeah, it seems to be... It's still a really good deck. I wouldn't be surprised if in KC Cup it still actually put up tier 1 results, just based on the actual skilled top tier players start playing it, and the top 100 actually shows a bunch of Predator Plants. That wouldn't surprise me. It's a very skilled deck, but yeah, it's... Hello, can you move? Is the advert blocking it? But the ad's blocking it, isn't it? It is. Okay, the invisible ad was blocking it. Anyway, so that's what I think Predator Plant is. Fleur. Okay, I've been seeing some absolute copium takes on Fleur. I've been seeing people putting this shit out of the top 3 tiers. Y'all are coping. This deck is easily a top 3 deck. Top 3 tier deck. The thing about Fleur, so Fleur for me is going to be including all the different Fleur art types. I can't be bothered separating them all. So that's Dogmatica, that's Invoked, that's your Infernoble. Anything remotely Fleur related, the plant one, I don't think the plant variation is very good anymore. But basically, all the Fleur stuff, one of those variations is top tier. There is no way it's not. I refuse to believe it. They're putting up Enfields. Let me actually just show you. Yeah, okay, we don't want to leak anything over here. This is the kind of Enfields they're putting up right now. Like, my god. And this isn't like a super uncommon Enfield. We've got 3 copies of Small World, 3 copies of Nadir Servant, 3 copies of the Field Spell, 3 copies of Alistair, 3 copies of the Dogmatica card. You're setting up fields like this commonly, and even when you're not setting them up, let's say you don't have the Dogmatica stuff, that's still what? Like 6 disruptions or 5 disruptions without Dogmatica stuff? Like, look at this, man. I've got 4 cards in hand still. And this deck is still really good going second too, so... I don't believe this is not a top tier deck. I think the only reason it doesn't have as much popularity and not as many people playing it is because there aren't as many absolutely stupid whales like myself that spent so much money on the selection box for the 3 Nadir Servant. But yeah, I think this deck is easily top 3 tiers. I wouldn't be surprised if this was actually a tier 2 deck list. This shit has been doing so well for me, especially on the ladder. I've been farming everybody, but maybe that's just bias and me playing against a lot of ladder players, which isn't exactly the highest quality of opponent, but yeah, I think this is easily top 3 tier deck. I consider it a tier 2 potentially. Drag Unity. So I've been seeing some cool Drag Unity builds with Dragon Maid, which actually seems kind of cool, but realistically, it's just doing what Raid Raptor's doing, if not worse. It's going second is terrible. Well, it has a spell card that makes it a bit easier, to be fair. Maybe it's a bit better than Raid Raptor, because it actually has some way of going second a little bit. Certainly not Rogue tier. I think this shit is ass. I think it's about the same as Raid Raptor, really. It's a little bit better, probably, because that one spell card does help it a little bit going second, whereas Raid Raptor just has... The skill puts a monster on the field going second, I think. So, I don't know. They're about the same. It can sometimes set up an Enfield. Its Enfields are worse than Raid Raptor, though, so maybe it's actually this way around. It's probably this way around. I think Raid Raptor's probably a better deck. I changed my mind. It's not that great. I don't like it whatsoever. I think Drag Unity got completely shafted by their skill release. They should have released the skill in a stronger state. Or at least released it in a way where... Because I think the skill requires you to shuffle a card back or something. If they just remove that part of the skill, it'd just make it slightly better. Even if it's not a top tier deck, it'd still be a lot more playable than it is. I don't understand. I don't know how Hero right now is just like plussing 52 cards and Predator Plant is plussing 52 cards and all this stuff. And Hero is like, well... Oh, sorry, and Drag Unity's like, well... You have to return a card from hand to deck to play us. I don't know. Tri-Brigade. So I'm including all Tri-Brigade variations of this, including the Lyrilusc one, which I think is the most popular and the one doing the best. I'm just including them all together because I can't be bothered doing so otherwise or doing anything otherwise. And recently, it's actually had quite a few results, the tier 3 version of it. Certainly more than Ghost. I mean, doing better than Ghost Trick. It's probably only still enough to be rogue tier. I kind of I find it hard to put it any higher than that, but it's been doing really decently. Like if you want to make the argument to put this in tier 3, I would be like, sure, whatever. I saw some people doing okay with this recently. I personally don't think it's quite good enough to be tier 3, so I'm gonna keep it in rogue, but maybe I'll change that at the end depending on the other stuff I put in here. I just find it kind of hard to put in the same tier as a. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I might change this at the end though. This is a pretty hard one. It's one of these two tiers. Dark Fluid. I don't really get the point of this deck. No, I don't like this deck at all. I think some reason people have actually did okay with this for a while. Even during the Predator Plant meta, I think it had like a top 100 JC cup or something stupid. I don't understand how. I really don't. I think now the meta's gotten even stronger than that. There is no way it's still even like decent. I don't like this deck at all. I don't like Dark Fluid. It's better than Crestron. It's probably better than everything in here. Maybe it's rogue. I don't know. I'll put it there for now, but I'd be tempted to put this in there. Alright. What's it? Oh, this is Speedroid. So I've included Speedroid on here because they recently received a new synchro since my last tier list video, so I thought I'd better cover it. And that's actually a really strong addition for the deck, but not really enough to make it any. I should put this up here because this is more of a competitive tier than this one. It's decent enough where I'd say it's playable now. It's certainly more playable than it was, but it's not doing anything too exceptional compared to what it was doing already. It's very similar to what it was doing already. It can make slightly stronger infields, but not much more than that. The whole field still just gets shit on by things like Book of Eclipses and stuff, to be fair, which is not great for a deck. I'm not super confident in Speedroid, so I'm going to put it there. But to be fair, I think Book of Eclipse might lose a little bit of popularity soon, because it doesn't really do a whole lot versus Hero. It doesn't do a whole lot versus things like Salad either, which is a Link deck. So maybe this will spike up a little bit in popularity with Book of Eclipse going down, because Book of Eclipse is one of the things that shits on Speedroid, unless they specifically open spell cards that stop it, and things like your Blizzards or your Lances, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to put it in there, though, for now. Hero! This is tier 1. So I think, okay, Hero for me is incredibly annoying, more so because of its popularity than because of its strength. The more I play against Hero, the more I'm like, this deck is definitely beatable. It's just really frustrating that you see it every single game, and that's the main reason I think most people are annoyed about it. I hate that it's a glue eater deck where you just don't really need to use your brain. Any person on the planet can play this deck, no matter how much of a genius you are. This shit is just like absolute brainless. Activate skill, boss monster's already on the field, your opponent already has to deal with it, then you just click another button a few more times. I hate it. I hate this click yes until your opponent dies sort of a deck. I don't like this deck whatsoever, but based on like results wise, it's definitely a tier 1 deck. It's the most popular deck by far. That could be because it's really cheap and because it's just easily accessible and incredibly easy. So if anyone can play it and everyone can play it because it's accessible, it's going to have a high popularity. And if you're throwing like it's basically if you throw a bunch of shit at a wall, eventually something's going to stick. It might be the case with Hero that if 60 people are entering a 132 player tournament, you're going to have a bunch of them top regardless, so. But it's basically doing super well anyway, so I think it's strong enough to be a tier 1 deck, and popularity-wise, it's certainly just. I don't know, I'm going to put it in tier 1 for now, but what I'm trying to get at is, I don't think the deck is so broken where it's unbeatable, and I wouldn't be surprised if some sort of meta shifts, or it turns out that another deck like Salad, for example, which has been looking really good, turns out to be the actual top dog of the format. But as for now, it seems to be the best deck, or. Yeah, I'll just put it in tier 1. You guys get what I mean. Fuck Super Poly. Alright, Salamangreat. So this is the new one. And based on tournament results and what a lot of top tier players have been saying, it's looking like a tier 1 deck, which is really, really cool. Because it's basically saved the format for a lot of people. Everyone hates Hero being the best deck. It is so lame. But Salamangreat being the best deck, it's like the polar opposite of Hero. Hero's just a bunch of just glue eatery, just uninteractive bullshit, and Salad, it's actually an interesting deck, does a lot of interesting things, and isn't just, unlike these two decks, where they're just like searching with skill for an uninteractable Super Poly or uninteractable just tribute thing going on. The best this thing does, in terms of in uninteractive stuff is it puts a monster on field that has to be flipped face up, which again can be interacted with. It has to activate the effect, which can be interacted with, and that will remove your opponent's back row. So it's a very strong deck. It turns out that despite having not the most insane end board, the fact you can set up the end fields with sometimes 0 cards, basically, you just activate the skill and it gets you to your end field. Even if the end fields aren't that insane, it does have plenty of room for tech cards, which makes the end fields a lot easier to survive, and then you have a shit ton of grind game available to you. It is the strongest grind deck around right now. It is just infinite resources. There's some of the screenshots of hands you get with this, especially with the spell card that grabs 2 Salamangreats from graveyard, adds them back to hand. Some of the hand sizes are like 10 cards or some bullshit. Just absolutely ridiculous hand size you get with this. The main downside is, like I said, the end fields are not actually that insane. They just come with a bunch of tech cards, but it's not that insane, all things considered, and it's also not drawing a whole bunch of cards, so if you want to have like a specific tech for a specific matchup, you're not actually going to get it that often with Salad, because you don't draw into it very often. You have to just hope you draw into it. So you can play a bunch of different techs for different matchups, not always going to hit the ones you're looking for though, against whatever matchup you're up against. But yeah, it's looking really, really strong, which is great because the deck is really fun. It has a lot of interaction going on, and even when the deck has a lot of like tech cards and stuff going on with it, the fact that the end fields aren't completely unbeatable or just unable to be broken, or you just feel like you have no chance against it, it's just such a good sign for the format, because it feels like you can actually play against it, or you actually play a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Even if in the end it is beating you, at least you've played the game, at least you had some fun. It's not going first. It's not like trying to go first with some like rogue tier deck against hero, and they just absolutely melt over your field with Serpolles and just vomiting out their garbage with their skill. This one's actually a lot more interesting of an archetype. So yeah, glad it's tier 1, and yeah, let's move on. Crystal Beast, rogue, I think. It's had a couple of interesting results recently, actually. It's just been cool to see. Crystal Beast's been going through a lot of weird changes. I think the issue with Crystal Beast is they're so reliant on their one fusion monster that unless you've done the stupid strategy I saw people doing with like the Sky Striker card, where they take the spell card that makes something unaffected, apply it to the Crystal Beast fusion monster so it can't be removed. That's the only strat I've seen where they've been able to protect it super consistently. And if you're not doing that, it gets hit by Serpolly, it gets hit by Kaijus, and it's just completely just dead in the water. But I think this deck versus like Salad, for example, is actually just it's completely playable. That matchup is just fine. Same with some of the other, just any of the other decks in the format. It's just against Super Poly specifically, if you lose your fusion, your deck's dead. It needs the fusion to resolve. If the fusion goes away and you've just lost it instantly, it really sucks. So I'd like to see this do a bit better, but until maybe Hero disappears from the format, it's not going to do too well. So I'm going to stick it in our Rogue tier for now. I think that means Tri Brigade probably has to go up here. I think Tri Brigade's better than the other stuff in this tier, maybe. Maybe not. Not sure yet. Maybe I'll put it up here for now. Train. So Train got some new support, but it's basically Despair going first. You literally set up nothing. There was an FTK going around with it that specifically requires you to open Eclipse, which isn't as... You can't just guarantee you can open Eclipse every game, so... I mean... It's something, I guess, for it to do going first. And going second, it's still a lot better, but it's not as insane. Even with the skill, it just doesn't seem that great. Even with the new spell card, it still doesn't seem that great. So I think this is just a meh tier deck. Yeah, I think it's just a meh tier. It's not really doing a whole lot. I mean, I think this deck would be fine if the format wasn't so strong at the top. Like, some of these top tier decks up here are just going to completely steamroll Train. Alright. Dragon Link. This is just a rogue tier deck right now. It's like Borrow Link, whatever you want to call it. It's weird to put this thing in rogue. This deck still seems really good. It hasn't really changed much from when it was like considered the best deck in the game. And a lot of what it's, I guess, a lot of the decks don't care as much about Lancia, which is one of the strongest points about it, is it can search Lancia. Hero cares a little bit, I guess, but it just doesn't seem I don't know, I'm not really sure why this deck isn't like a top tier deck still, because like, it still feels like it should be a tier 3 deck and just what it does, but I don't know, the skill is bullshit, and it's still not enough to make it a top tier deck right now, and I don't really know why that is. Wouldn't be surprised though if it ended up creeping back into tier 3, just because it is, I feel like it should have the strength of a tier 3 deck, honestly. Maybe people just got bored of it. Shiranui. I don't really know why people still play this deck, but it's still incredibly popular. The fact that I still see this in getting COG all the goddamn time, and it was still popular enough to be in the top 20 decks on DLM is crazy. I mean, being honest, it's not as good as anything in this tier. It just isn't. It's so outdated, but I mean, it's playable. It's about as playable as everything else in here. Like, Meh tier is like... This tier is all playable stuff. It's just they're not super insane or anything. I think that's where Shiranui sort of sits. It's very balanced, basically. Fam Knight, same thing as Shira. I had to do it because of popularity reasons, but it's not doing anything exceptional right now. I'm going second. I think this deck is just arse cheeks, so it's about the same as everything else in here. Star Syrup, I think this is tier 3 still. I think DLM, their tier list, I think they dropped it out recently, but based on like the last month of tournament results, it's been doing fairly decent. I still see it popping in and out of occasionally doing well in tournaments and whatever else. So I find it hard to put anything lower than tier 3. Like, rogue tier stuff that I consider very, very rarely just sneaking their way into top cuts and stuff. And tier 3 is stuff that quite consistently is still getting just places, whether it be just 1 or 2 or whatever else slots in top 32s and top 16s. I do feel like Star Surf is one of those decks that is probably about doing about the same amount as Tri-Brigade is, so I feel like it does deserve a tier 3 slot for sure. But it is getting a little bit outdated now, we'll see. Dragon Maid, I think it's the same stuff as these ones, if not a little bit better. Yeah, it's about the same as these guys. I think all 3 of these decks are doing the same sort of tournament results. They're not doing it exceptional, but that's sort of what you expect for a tier 3 deck. Dragon Maid is probably a bit more of an advantage than these other two, in terms of just the sheer amount of tops it's been getting. Its grind game is insane. It's typically, if it gets through the first turn, you have a much better chance. But I guess now that Sad is sort of out, and that's a very grindy deck, maybe gets out-grinded a little bit. But it's one of the best grind decks in the game. If it gets through the first turn, you're going to be shitting on most things, so I think this deck is doing decent. Even going second has some nice ways to play through Disruption with some of the dragon cards you search for can negate your opponent's monsters, and you can have the trap card, of course, put on the field that bounces your stuff to avoid negation and destroying effects and stuff, so I think this deck should deserve a tier 3 slot. Shadow, again, this is another tier 3, going through all the tier 3 decks at once. Yeah, Shadow deserves a tier 3 for sure. Mostly because it sets up Winder. You don't have an out to Winder, you can have a problem. And it has all the insane grinding game that comes with it. It's just a really strong deck. Going second, Shadow Fusion is insane. It always will be insane, so the deck's power level is just easily enough to be tier 3. It's kind of hard to bump it out of tier 3. I think in KC Cups, you'll definitely see people topping with this deck still. It's also a deck that a lot of really good players like to play. It's a really fun deck to play, which always keeps it having some sort of tournament top cuts and results. So yeah, I don't think I need to say much else about it. It's been around for a while now. It's a really good deck. It's also really grindy, and a grindy format with Salad, you might be able to compete with it a bit. So I'll put it there. It's probably a bit better than these other ones though. I think it's probably about there. Cyber Dragon. I mean, I'm putting Dark Fluid in there. I don't like Dark Fluid. I think Cyber Dragon's probably a bit better than Dark Fluid, though. About the same. Yeah, I think that Cyber Dragon, unfortunately, its main end field that it sets up most games is your 2 Xyzes and your Trap card, and that's basically all you're setting up, which seems like a lot, but then it comes into like Hero, for example, which is super polys one of them away, and then you're just left with not the most optimal disruption. The Trap card that nukes everything is pretty good, but it's not exactly the hardest thing to get around, especially like a Neos Fusion that defends from destruction and stuff, or just a singular MST. I don't know, I think the deck had potential to be more of a rogue deck, but when it came to actual tournament play and tournament results, it just never really got there. Which is a shame, because I think Cyber Dragon's a really fun deck, but if we're looking at actual results and stuff, it really just didn't quite make it into the rogue tiers. Shark is close to tier 3. Shark has the added bonus of being really good going first, not so great going second, but it can't be super polyed as well, which is an advantage into Hero. I'm just not sure what tech cards Shark can really play right now that's really that great versus Hero. Because it used to play like Needle Sealing and stuff, but Needle Sealing is now limit 3, which kind of screws over playing all the other limit 3 cards you want to play in Shark. Which is pretty bad for it, actually. Not having access to like all the limit 3s in this deck now because it's lost its Needle Sealing. And Needle Sealing isn't good into Neos Fusion, sort of. It's definitely at least rogue. It's way above Meh. I'm considering tier 3 for it, but it might not quite be good enough for tier 3 right now. Might not be. It's close. I think this is almost on par with Star Seraph. Yeah, I think it's probably more like this, though. Boxer. I'm not going to rate Boxer right now, because Boxer, we haven't seen the new card that comes out. The card that comes out for it is in... probably on the 1st of next month, whenever they drop the new ranked reward ticket thing, and then they're probably going to give us the new Exceed. Until we get the new Exceed, though, there's not much point playing the art type. It's infinitely better with a new Exceed, and might even be a tier 3 deck with it. I'm actually confident it could be a tier 3 deck, but until then, I'm going to put it down here. Lyrilusc. This is tier 2. Lyrilusc can basically beat everything on here on a good day, but on a more bad day, it kind of gets shit on by the topper tier stuff. But it has, like, you guys have seen Lyrilusc a billion times now. It will easily be a KC Cup topper. You'll see plenty of it. I don't really need to say much about this deck. All the stuff that's good about it, the stuff that can be untargetable, it can prevent you taking damage going first hero, which is fantastic. It can just sort of flood the board going second as well, so going second is fine. It has room for tech cards. It's all round one of the best decks in the format. I think it's just a tier 2. On a good day, this could be a tier 1. Could still win some tournaments, but it's probably not going to be winning as much as these other guys are currently. Morphtronic. Originally, I was going to put this in Despair tier. But then I saw some people setting up that stupid Earth monster that negates monsters by discarding spells. And they have a shit ton of equip spells in hand for some reason. So, it actually can do stuff, which is more than I thought it was going to do. So, Meh tier you should be proud of your Meh tier for this deck, honestly. But because originally I wanted to put this in Despair, but I've actually played against it a couple of times, and I've admitted it can do some broken shit, and sometimes it sets up some insane fields that you're not able to deal with if you don't open the right text or whatever else, or if your deck is like entirely monster reliant, for example. But yeah, I think it's probably down here somewhere. Striker. I've been seeing like 0 tawny tops from this deck recently, which is not a good sign for it. But I think, again, in KC Cup, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a top tier Striker player in tier 3. I feel like every time I take it out of this tier, I regret it later on, just because I see a KC Cup result and there's still someone still topping with it. It's just another one of those decks that's really skilled. If you're really good at the deck, you can beat everything with it, just off of just being really fucking good at the game. But I think, from what I've been seeing recently, it hasn't had that many toppings, so it's probably only Rogue. I've also seen it as an engine a bunch of shit recently, so it's probably something like this. Actually, screw it. I'm putting Fleur in tier 2. I am so biased on that deck. I'm gonna put it in tier 2. Okay. Alright, so that is my tier list. Is there anything else I want to change? I'm not super confident on Tri-Brigade tier 3. I think Star Seraph is probably better than it. Not super confident in this being tier 3. I'll put that in Rogue as well. It's close. It'd be close. I mean, it does play the Lyrilusc cards. It can set up the I don't want to die versus hero. The hero play, which is always a promising play to make. But then why don't you just play Lyrilusc? I know, I'll do something like that. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's tier list. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you didn't, leave a like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, hopefully the battling boxer stuff comes out and we can put this in a higher tier, because I'm very, very excited for it. So can't wait for that. Oh god, it's now stuck to the tier list. Oh god, I'll put it up here for now. It's going to ruin my thumbnail now. No, I can't get rid of it. No. That'll be another. Alright, problem solved. Alright, thank you guys for watching. Hope you see you next one, and yeah, laters.